What's up, everybody? Yes, I'm back. Welcome to yet another episode of On the Table with me, Tepi.
And DJ Black Velvet Khomotso.
Church Girl is also here.
And of course, we're not rolling alone today. Yes, there's a beautiful lady here who's not only just beauty, but is absolute brains. Dr. Kim is in the building.
Bona.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Drum roll. It's going to be a really, really exciting episode. Thanks to Viya. I'm so excited about them and their partnership that we have with On the Table. So a big shout out to you guys. And if you don't know who and what Viya is, it's my favorite people in the whole wide world. We're talking all things women's health, women's sexual health, and this is exactly what they promote. They make sure that we're not only enjoying sex, but we're educated about it. We know exactly what's going on down here, and we're going to talk about that today as well. We're going to talk all things family planning. I almost said feminine planning. Family planning today, and of course, we got a beautiful package from the team of Viya. Thank you so much for that, and it includes a beautiful card. But before we even go there, how are you doing, Dr. Kim?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to discuss all of these incredible things.
How important is it for us also to just talk about family planning as friends, even as us just chilling like this?
I mean, I think it's really important for us to have open discussions about these things, and destigmatize the taboo that surrounds like having these discussions openly. All of us go through a period when we need to have these discussions, and I think that the more information that's circulating there and that's correct, the more empowered we are.
Love that.
And by the way, for those who don't know what family planning is, but what I love about this conversation is that we're going to speak about sex openly. We're going to speak about everything that has to do with our health when it comes to family planning, when it comes to our wombs. These are conversations that we've really, really wanted to have. And thank you so much for facilitating this conversation with us. So, gents and ladies, sit down. It's going to be a very interesting one. It's time to educate the gents. And ladies, I know there's a lot of us who don't know what's happening with our bodies. We don't know what we're taking for our bodies. And next thing we see, our bodies react in different ways. So that's the conversation we're going to have today. But not before we start these cards. So these are the cards that we got from Viya, right? And they are Viya cards. But more than anything, it's the game to get the conversation started.
Yes.
Great one. We have it here because that's what we do. We're all about conversations right here on the table. So, Dr. Kim, let me start with you.
Oh no, am
Yeah.
I ready?
That's a
I'm
good
just
one.
going to take out of anyway, and you'll see what the cards have. So the first one says, do you feel comfortable telling your partner that you don't feel like having sex?
No. I think there's this expectation, right, that when your partner would like to have sex, you're obliged to entertain him. So I wouldn't say I'm 100% comfortable, but yeah, it is what it is, right?
Girls, have you ever had that as well? To almost feel like you are unable to say to your partner that, hey, Joe, today.
I've recently started learning to say no and be okay with me saying I'm not in the mood. But at first, I would easily just be like, oh, okay, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Just lie there and let him, finish himself off, whatever.
How does it work for married people, Nolu?
Well, for me in particular, it's I don't say anything, but my actions show it.
You pretend to be asleep.
I pretend to be asleep. I'd be like, I'm so tired today. Then I'd wear pajamas. I don't wear pajamas when I sleep at all. Hot or cold, I don't. But on that,
You've got a body for your body. Ay.
but guys, man, Nani, you always want sex.
They never have a switch off button.
no.
But do you feel like we're doing it for ourselves, guys, or we're doing it for them? I mean, if we're not able to say yes, yes, let's have it, and I'm tired, I don't want to have it. Because when a man says he doesn't want, you're not going to get sex.
True.
So why can't we do it? Why can't we say that?
I think it's in the way that we were taught about sex.
Yeah.
Well, especially for me, a married person. You know, when we have these bridal showers and the gogos, and they give you the down low. But you know, emchadweni gay babes, you cook every day. Yes. And you cook different dishes every day, and not just cooking in the kitchen, but you cook every day. How do I cook every day? I don't even stand in the kitchen every day.
And you don't get mad here, but you get mad here.
Yes.
Well, talking about that, here's a question for you. What makes you feel aroused?
You know,
Please, can I choose one for
there's
you?
that thing they do, you know, when they breathe down your neck. I don't know what's happening here. Something happens and then they deepen their voice like, Wuzalawen.
Can I try it on you? Nolu, what was your first sexual encounter like?
It was. Bleh.
They said a prayer first.
That's how it was, really. It was.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't. So the thing is, I'd always been curious about sex, right? And I had been contemplating having it for quite a while. Then I spoke to my cousin about it. I think I've told the story before on the show. Spoke to my cousin about it. I said, I'm scared because I hear it's painful. You also bleed. I don't want to bleed. And then she's like, no, man, you love being massaged, right? So you know that pain, that
It's a
what
nice
is
pain.
it's a nice pain. Yeah, it hurts, but it feels good. That's what sex is like. That's how she explained it to me. And I was like, okay, let me give it a try. And when I did, then I was like, oh, okay.
And it wasn't so painful.
No, it wasn't so painful. If I did bleed, it was like a little, but it was all right.
It was just it's just like
I
how
don't
it
even
is.
think I remember it. That's how a non-event it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, one last one for me before we
for
get
you.
straight into the conversation. Well, the one that you have is the one you're gonna have to ask me because you dropped them. You dropped them all.
I can pick them up. Asaka.
Go.
Okay, what makes you feel desired?
Money, 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 money.
And that's the end of our show for today.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to our TED Talk. It's as good as that. No. Sure, what makes me feel desired? I think it has to be in the way that he looks at me and touches me. In fact, just the other day, I had an orgasm by just looking at him, and he was looking at me through the mirror. You know what I mean? So he's standing right behind me, and I'm here, and I'm almost semi-naked. I just had my underwear on, and it was just like a sensual, non-sexual interaction. And that for me, it got me there.
I'm sure.
It was lovely, and I felt so sexy. And I haven't felt that sexy in a very long time.
Nice.
Thank you. Let's talk to prevent myself from getting pregnant. By the way, once again, thank you to Viya for having to let us have this conversation today. I think it's an important one to have. Let's talk family planning, Dr. Kim. What is it? Explain it to us holistically.
Okay, family planning is essentially intervening in various ways to prevent yourself from falling pregnant. There are various options, which we'll go into. But if you're not ready for a child, then you should be having family planning or contraceptive discussions with your healthcare provider.
Would you say a withdrawal method is family planning?
AKA the pull-out method.
No, it's not effective. Okay, we're not really sure how effective it is, but
Well,
no.
I'm not pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
Kidding. Yeah.
Guys will always say things like, I've got a great pull-out game. But how sure are you until your period doesn't come? Yeah. So those are the consequences of it. Also, there's pre-cum, right? Which a lot of people don't factor in.
Let's talk about that. Wow. I've heard people can get pregnant with pre-cum.
Absolutely.
People can have pre-cum. And
they don't know.
Yes.
The man doesn't know when the pre-cum has arrived.
No, they don't. But pre-cum is definitely something that can impregnate you. Wow. And this is why the pull-out method is not 100% successful. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question here. Why then do we get, what's the word? So as a young person growing up in the location, my aunt is the one that took me for family planning when I spoke to her about engaging in sex and whatnot. And luckily for me, I didn't experience any a negative comeback from the sisters or the nurses that give you the injection or the pill. But I know majority of my friends, they get an attitude from the sisters in clinics and the likes when they go for contraceptive. Why does it seem like when we go there, it immediately communicates that we are having sex? Like, why do the mothers there, the aunties, they judge us? Yes. Should we not? Should we not be doing it?
Absolutely. But I mean, again, these are conversations we're only recently having, right? And historically, we've been told that we should wait for marriage before we can start having sex, or wait until we're in a committed relationship. And I'm not necessarily certain that right now it's the younger generation of nurses who are doing this. It might just be the older generation.
It was the older.
But also remember, healthcare providers come from various backgrounds, right? And when you're a healthcare provider, you're in a position of power. And how you exercise that power is completely dependent on you and your professionality, you know, and how professional you are. So to the colleagues who are shaming women and shaming young girls for seeking family planning, I would say do better.
But how was the conversation had with you when you were a kid when it comes to family planning? Because like you said, for you, it was your aunt. For me, my cousin got pregnant at 14 and my sister just looked at me and said, hey, if you're doing this, mpote, so we can go get your contraceptive. And I felt like she robbed me of that experience to have a conversation fully, not only about sex, but also about contraceptives completely. Because there's so many other contraceptives that are around. And all she said to me was like, tell me if you're having sex at 14.
I was lucky. It was my mom. She had like an open conversation on it. She brought condoms home. She told me what Depo was, what ne straight is. But I was very shy. You know, I couldn't come out and say, Mommy, now I'm cloffing. But I was lucky enough to have a parent who was willing to have that kind of conversation with me. As much as I was embarrassed to have that conversation, but it happened. I was also lucky enough that she was willing. She was like, you know what? I know public health clinics, they're not so nice to you young ones. She went on to find a GP for me and opened a file for me, and I went there, and at the time it was only 60 bucks.
Beginning, that you get ill-treated for going to seek something that's going to be good for you, then why would you go back? There's no
It
reason
explains the
if
high
the
rate
nurse is
of-
going to shout at me or give me an attitude.
Of pregnancy and abortions.
Yeah.
Doc, how was you're a doctor now, you're more liberal now, but I don't know if your parents were the same. You can actually just tell us. But generally, how was your contraceptive conversation had with you, if it was even had to begin with?
Listen, guys, I'm 33 and I still have never spoken to my parents about sex, right? Or family planning. So I like to think I grew up in a really liberal home. You know, my parents were giving us alcohol to drink at a young age. Yes, the idea was that they were going to teach us how to nurse a drink so that nobody ever takes advantage of us, because we were all girls, you know. And my dad was very proactive about this. But like I said earlier, it depends on your household. And in my house, everything except sex was up for discussion, right? And my family planning from my parents consisted of, if you have sex before marriage, that is a sin. We don't do that. And so I suppose that was my version of family planning. Like, okay, where you're married, it's okay. So in my first relationship in my 20s, right, I actually knew very little about family planning. Everything I knew was from med school, right? I'd learned everything about that theoretically. And so when the time came to discuss family planning, I was just like, where do I start, you know? And this is somebody who has the background, but still, like, you're confused about where to go, like how to go forward. So I will say that was my experience. And I've had to actively educate myself and live through other people's experiences.
You know what I love about these conversations is that also it's conversations that I had so openly on the Viya platform, which is also what I really, really like about that platform. But also with that being said, ladies, let's think back on the times when we started to go on a contraceptive. When you thought of a contraceptive at the very early ages, at the very early stages. Let's talk about that. Your first contraceptive method? Outside of the pull-out
It was
game?
it was the injection. I think that's all that that was there at the clinic at that time, and I think I used it for like a good 3 months, and then after that I stopped. I just didn't feel good. I didn't know much about it. I didn't research. I didn't do background as to why I was not feeling good. But it was just something I was like, no, I'm not willing to go through this again. Then I just stopped, and I really didn't use a contraceptive up until my older age. And even then, I started using the patch. You know, I'm not crazy about contraceptive.
Well, you've got a son to prove it. Okay. In marriage, thank God, because wow, Tina's in Jan.
My first one, my first contraceptive. Okay, fine. Let me tell you a story.
Yes, please.
So the condom broke. Hey, and I cried.
Never expected that.
Hey,
Now the story starts.
the condom broke. I cried. I thought I was going to be pregnant. I didn't know, Wuti, there's what we call the morning after pill.
Okay.
AKA
Girl,
Plan B.
AKA Plan B. Girl didn't know. Girl listens to other girls in the street. They're like, no, girl, take bicarbonate, mix that with Coca-Cola. It's going to solve your problem. Then I was like, but this is not going to work. I'm so scared I'm going to get pregnant. I'm only in grade 11. What am I going to say to my parents? And then I went to my mom. It's like, girl, this is Plan B. Let's go. Then we went to the pharmacy. She got the pill for me. They explained how it worked, but I was still embarrassed. I couldn't explain because she said, once you start having sex, come through, tell me. But I couldn't go. So that was my
Sure,
first.
and your mom opened up the channels so much.
No,
for
she
you.
did. She did. Explains why I had my first kid at like 27. So yeah.
Yeah?
That was my first one. Plan B.
And then your next is that
Nay straight. The injection.
I love that she said that. She said Plan B was her contraceptive. Doc, come through with it, girl.
Educate us.
How many of us have gone for that morning after pill and we're thinking, yes, today I'm taking it. 72 hours later, I'm taking it. 24 hours, I'm taking it. Then next thing we know, hello, baby.
Yes.
Because we're trying to use it as a contraceptive method.
Exactly, and like really, you're not supposed to. So, I mean, Plan B is essentially there for when a mistake happens, right? When you know you're not on contraceptive or like the barrier method or condom breaks, and women shouldn't be taking this regularly because there are side effects to it, like all medication, you know, and it increases. So it's a flush of like hormones into your system to try and prevent you from going through your normal hormonal cycle. And that dysregulates and disrupts your natural flow.
I've heard you can only have it 3 times a year. Is that true?
And I've heard it more, guys.
You're really not supposed to be taking it every week or every month. Okay.
Did you hear that?
But I suppose I don't think there's a restriction like on time. So let's say, for example, God forbid, you're raped like 4 times in 1 year, you know, then Plan B has to be given because you can't fall pregnant. But we must know that the more you take it, the more at risk you become.
And is it true that it's also depending on your weight, how much you weigh on the scale? Is it true, or is it a myth that if you weigh like over 155 pounds, it's not going to be so effective?
Not necessarily. They give us there's a certain amount that's pre-populated in each pill, and everyone, regardless of weight, is given that same pill. So no.
Okay.
So I've gone through a few contraceptive methods. Don't judge me. I still have my implant on. That stopped working in 2018. Look, I know I'm supposed to take it out. Girl. Funny enough, actually, funny story. Obviously, I was on the implant on. Horrible experience, personally, if you have to ask me. I was spotting 6 months. In fact, the whole year. And it works for 3 months, 3 years, right? So it's there injecting hormones for 3 years. I was spotting half the time. I hated males' genitals. I didn't want to see a penis, contrary to how I feel now. But you know what I mean? Like, I didn't want any of that. I hated the thought of sex. I didn't want to be touched. I I think I rarely ever fapped, if anything.
May I ask why you kept it in then?
Also, healthcare clinics. I, in fact, went to a clinic around it must have been in the Bryanston area. And when I went to the Bryanston side, and this lady said to me, "Is this what you wanted?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Don't come here 10 days later and try take it out." So for me, it was more of I have to go back to that lady and say to her,
Now I want it out.
I want
this
it out.
thing I no longer want it on.
Yeah.
So you see, do you know what I mean? So it was kind of scary for me to
Yeah.
go back.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy the experience of the implant on. Okay, fine, I didn't get pregnant, great. And then prior to that, in varsity, I was on Diana 35, and I'm still on Diana 35 even now. I'm risking. I'm a risk. I will skip my pill and I'll go back and take 2. Let's talk about that. You know, there's that thing that they say, if you've skipped today, you have your
2 the
pill,
next day.
you take 2 the next day.
No,
Oh, I took 2 today. Doctor, tell me that.
Yo.
I took 2 today.
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought this up, right? Because, well, let's first address the implant that you had.
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, you were well within your rights to go and have it removed whenever you wanted. Okay, and yes, the side effects that you experienced, quite a few people experience, right? So there's the irregular spotting, which can be handled, by the way. If they had given you a contraceptive pill, while you had the implant on, it would have regulated things and you might...
I didn't get my period also, which was great, but
Yes.
we go on.
Some people don't get their periods, right? Some people put on a bit of weight. Some people have no changes to their weight, no changes to their sexual libido, no changes to their overall mood, okay? And then there are people like you, of course. And in that case, what I say is, listen, we've got a couple more options. Come, let's remove it. It's as painless as putting it in. You know, we give you a small little local anesthetic where the cut was, and then we just pull it out.
But you see, that's my thing. It wasn't a cut. It wasn't a cut. And that's why I stopped. I was actually at my gynae's table, and she said, you know, you don't have to do it if you don't want. It will just be a foreign object. And I said, perfect, let's not. Because I saw she had a razor, girl, and I was like, I'm not trying to have that scar. All I have right now is almost just like a dot. Do you know what I mean? I can still feel it, I think. I'll tell you.
Yeah, you've made us feel it before.
Oh,
Felt it.
I'm that girl. It's my party trick. Yeah, so I haven't taken it out. I still have it. But, you know, she just said, there it is. All she said is it would just be a foreign object in your body. And she doesn't like foreign objects in people's bodies. But look, if that's what I want to do, pro-choice.
Okay.
Do you think that's also advisable?
Do that.
Well, it depends, really. Some people's implants can get dislodged and like travel a little bit deeper, and they might need to go and have it like surgically removed, right? This is really rare, but I mean, obviously, the longer you have it, your body's used to it by now. It shouldn't cause any reactions. So if you want to continue with your party trick, then go for it. But it is a foreign object in your body. Yeah.
And then the contraceptive that we're talking about, which is the pill, the skipping. Many of us live on the edge. The skip, how does that work? Does it even work?
No. So really, also it depends which cycle you're in, right? But no, the overall answer is no, that doesn't work. And that's not good practice and that should not be done. Okay, because what you're doing is you're taking a certain amount of hormone every day, right? Which is literally... your brain is not secreting the normal amount of hormone that would regulate your cycle and cause you to become fertile, okay? So the the contraceptive, basically, the pill, is telling you that, what am I saying? Sorry. The pill is essentially a little bit of hormone. And you can imagine that if you skip 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and you take 3 of those, you're almost taking triple the dose, the recommended dose, which is not good. Remember, contraceptives have side effects as well, okay? And some of those side effects are clots, right? You might increase your risk of forming a blood clot, right? Which can travel to your lungs, okay?
The
Stress.
embolism. Is
Yes.
that right, Doc?
Yes.
Listen to you.
I'm gonna take you to school, girl. Med school.
Okay, take me to school. Yeah, you were saying that?
Yeah, but this form of contraceptive, the pill, was initially like it was one of our first line forms of preventing pregnancy in women. Okay. And the reason they came up with all the other methods was because it became very impractical for some people and became very difficult to stick to a schedule. So if 8 a.m. every morning you're taking this pill, right, and then you forget and you take it a few hours later, you are at high risk of falling pregnant.
Yo. She's done that one
Yes.
too many times. Look at her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
This month has been a mess then. So what do we do then? So how do we do this, and how effective is it then if that's the case? Look, I may have an alarm, but sometimes my 11 o'clock might not necessarily. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So these things vary, and I could say, oh, I'll switch off my alarm to have it, but I don't have it immediately. How can I do this? How can we remedy that thing of not taking double the dose and not skipping the pill?
So
Things like that.
it's quite simple. You sit down with your doctor and you say, listen, I am a really busy 21st century woman, right? The pill doesn't work for me.
Did you hear yourself? Okay, go on.
The pill doesn't work for me. I have a really erratic schedule and I want to discuss what other options there are. And any like healthcare provider worth their salt will sit and give you all the options and they'll say, okay, cool. If the oral contraceptive doesn't work for you, let's discuss maybe you having to only change your contraceptive once a week. Let's give you the patch. And you're like, yeah, but like, I don't want my mom or my grandmom to see the patch on me when I'm showering, you know, or it's very unsightly and I can't wear my bikini and I don't like the patch. So I can't change my patch every week. Then we say, okay, then let's consider maybe giving you an injection 4 times a year. So every 3 months. And you're like, yeah, but I heard my friend like had really bad side effects and I don't want to get fat. And you're like, these are valid reasons. Okay, maybe let's consider putting in a copper IUD, an intrauterine device or an intrauterine system. And what's the difference? Intrauterine system usually has hormones in it, right? And it's a small, short procedure that is done in your GP's offices or your gynae's rooms, and you basically open your legs and the doctor puts in a device, cuts the strings, and it sits in your womb, right? And it releases hormone in the womb, right? And so there's less effect or less hormone circulating inside your body, right?
How long can you have it inside your body?
If we're talking about the hormonal one, up to 5 years.
Okay, and the copper one?
The copper one is up to 10 years. So the copper one is non-hormonal. So you put it in and the copper prevents implantation, right? So you can't fall pregnant with it. It's 99% effective, okay? Obviously, there are contraindications, which you'll discuss with your doctor. So, for example, if you're looking at the copper IUD, intrauterine device, or it's known as the loop, you obviously can't have it if you have very heavy periods, right? If you suffer from severe cramping during your periods, if you're allergic to copper, which a lot of people are, then this isn't something that should be offered to you. But for example, if you wanted the same sort of like device, but you wanted hormones released, right, with the intrauterine system, then they put it in the exact same way, and that the hormones released actually decrease your periods. So some people get shorter periods to no periods at all. And
Christmas. That sounds like Christmas.
And on top of that, it's also used to treat like seriously bad hormonal menstrual pains.
So with the Batung, is it IUD?
Intrauterine device.
That one.
And intrauterine system.
What happens when you have fibroids and cysts? Does it impact? Does it have an effect on you in that way, negatively or positively? What actually happens when you find out that you have those mini complications?
Yeah.
Okay, so so cysts. Let's talk about fibroids first. So fibroids generally, right, depending on how big they are, right, tend to make you bleed a little bit more during your menstruation or periods, right? And some people also experience a lot more pain during their their periods if they have fibroids, right? In those cases, I wouldn't recommend a copper device because the copper device can exacerbate that, and it generally for the first 6 months, it can cause your periods to be a little bit heavier, right? So if you're already losing a lot of blood because of fibroids, then you might lose a little bit more with the intrauterine copper device.
So for someone who has severe fibroids, which I can imagine a whole lot of ladies who are watching this as well do suffer from it, even from those who have extracted them before because they were that they were that dangerous. They were now causing some sort of
Blood loss and anemia,
etc.
Yes,
Do you know what I mean? It's
pain.
quite it's a complication.
Yes.
What kind of contraceptive would you recommend for them? Because they have really hectic period pains and severe bleeding.
So often it's different for everyone, right? You take a full history, right? And in that case, I would probably recommend something a little bit more hormonal, right? So if there are no other contraindications, probably the combined oral contraceptive. And again, if they're not happy with that, or they have maybe a history of blood clots or pulmonary embolus in their family, or they've had this before, then I would say no. Again, it's negotiating with everyone's physiology independently. But I would generally say maybe for people with fibroids, it's probably safer to have the intrauterine hormonal device.
So generally, Doc, are we then saying that before one gets on a family planning or contraceptive, should we do a health check first?
So every healthcare practitioner is supposed to examine you before they prescribe a contraceptive plan.
Had that done.
Mine was Google. What was yours?
You know what I mean?
Vets, they just say pee in a cup and come back.
Oh, that's a lot, honey. They just want to check if you're pregnant, actually. That's
Yes,
probably why.
yes. I mean, some people don't even get that. Some people come and they present 3 months later and they're like, I think I'm pregnant, but I had the IUD put in 3 months ago. And it turns out that nobody checked if they were pregnant when they initially came. You've got to check for blood pressure, right? You've got to take a family history. So important to know family history, to know the patient history as well. If you're suffering from, for example, or you've had breast cancer before, or if you suffer from, like I mentioned, clots, right? Or
endometriosis, perhaps.
yes, then there are some options that are off the table for you completely. If and this is where it becomes lovely, to like negotiate each patient's physiology. If there's somebody who presents like with acne, right? And they're young, healthy, no contraindications. And they're like, listen, I want to solve the acne and I want to sort out like family planning. Then combined oral contraceptive might be the best option for them.
But how effective is that? Because that's the reason why I was on a contraceptive a couple of months ago before I started having sex. But you know what? I started off because I wanted to clear my skin, which it has, and because when I go to the gym, I lose breast mass.
Okay.
So when I'm on it, my breasts grow.
Okay.
So I took it to grow my breasts or to have them at a decent size that I'm happy. Yeah, like a fuller cup, and of course to clear my skin and to stop me from getting pregnant. But, how effective is that to have a contraceptive for those reasons? And how long can you actually even go on with this strategy for?
I mean, remember, you can take the combined oral contraceptive for as long as you don't want to fall pregnant, okay? And it's very effective for some people in clearing their skin. Again, I'm not a dermatologist, right? But for somebody who's got like generalized acne vulgaris, that's not cystic and that's not really bad. It's just like a few little pimples here, especially if they come during like your menses, that week before your periods come and you have a breakout. Contraceptive is great. Like the pill is great for that.
You have minimal... ladies, let's then talk about this thing that we all run away from. Pap smears. I've heard so many people talk about how painful pap smears are, how uncomfortable pap smears are, which is so strange. My experience of pap smears are completely different.
You go to a private hospital. Because it could explain the difference.
Okay, that could probably explain the difference.
go.
But why? How was your experience? Tell me.
No, I haven't had one.
You've never had a pap smear?
Oh, she's
I'm one of those.
great day you're having in the office today. Hey.
I'm one of those. I'm
May
one
I
of
ask
those.
why?
Most people, when they came back from it, they would come back with these stories that would scare me out of it. Then I would not go. You know, that's the only reason I haven't had one.
Nolu?
Pleasant. I'd go today, tomorrow. I'm happy.
Yeah. How often should we be taking, should we be having pap smears?
So, the guidelines say that you should be having, after you start becoming sexually active, you should have a pap smear for 2 consecutive years. And if in those 2 consecutive years, so this year and next year, if your results are normal, right, then you can go every 3rd year.
Okay. The Holy Spirit got me.
So what do they check for when I go in for a pap smear? I can imagine they don't check for STDs because that's a different thing, unless you already have.
So, they basically, it depends what kind of pap smear you're having, right? Or what the doctor requests, right? They can do HPV screening, right? So, for those who don't know, pap smear is basically when you put in a speculum in the vagina, okay? And I'm going to segue a little bit and say that honestly, it's not that painful. If you explain to your doctor that, like, you know, you're quite sensitive, and I generally, in my practice, prefer to use the plastic speculums, right? They're just as effective, but they're not cold. They're not cold because, like, the metal speculums are quite uncomfortable. And, you know, having gone to my gynae a couple of times, I hate those things, you know, and that's a deterrent for me, you know. So I generally prefer those, but whatever your healthcare provider decides to use is fine. And then they go into the cervix, and just at the tip of the cervix, right, they put a brush in, and the brush scrapes. I say scrapes. It brushes against, right, the opening of your cervix and a little bit of the inside of your cervix, right? And then they take a 360 swab of this, and then they send it to the lab. And then the lab looks at it under a microscope, and they make sure that the mucosal cells that are growing there are normal, right? If there's any sort of like change in the cell shape, right, then they're like, okay, it looks like there's some sort of malignancy here, right? And this is why it's important to have pap smears, right? Because HPV, which is human papillomavirus, can cause cervical cancer, right? HPV is literally...
God, I need to see you after this. I need to see you after this because who turns up?
HPV causes cervical cancer, can cause cervical cancer. There are many different strains of HPV. So they generally check for, if I'm not mistaken, about 4 different strains, okay? HPV also causes genital warts, right? And genital warts can also lead to cancers, right? So basically what we're trying to do is make sure that while you've been having sex, right, you haven't caught this silent virus, right? Because it is silent, right? Nobody goes and looks at their cervix every day, right? And nobody knows what's happening. It's not like you're going to have other symptoms. Okay, so this is the only way to pick it up. Men are carriers, right? But they're never affected by HPV. Okay, I mean the cancerous type. They are affected by genital warts. Okay, so really important for us. Unfortunately, we carry the fallout. You know.
Prevent. That's why you must actually just abstain.
Okay, I'll go, and I'll come back and tell you about my experience.
Great.
So how long is it? I mean, for someone who's never taken a pap smear before, which there are plenty. You know, it's you're completely human for this. And for some people, it's they're scared. For some people, it's that they just don't know. How long is this procedure? Like you said, it's pain-free. But for someone who just is dreading it, how long would it take them more or less?
It really depends, again, on the healthcare provider. I sound like a lawyer. I'm sorry. But on average, it should take about 2 to 3 minutes, right? This is when they actually start.
Shorter than guys. Like,
how? You're giving them too much credit. That's a lot of time. Yeah.
Really, it's you go, so you put the speculum in, right? You go in with a brush, you turn it, you pull out. So as I've actually done it now, literally, you can see the timing. There's no special equipment that you need. Everyone's cervix sits in different locations, so it might be uncomfortable while the doctor's looking. But I always say, like, just talk to your healthcare provider throughout. Say, oh, that's a bit uncomfortable, or okay, I'm doing fine. This is causing me discomfort.
One of my doctors once said to me, come for a pap smear. I mean, I had done a pap smear and they said I must come back after I was 30. That was, before I turned 30. After I turned 30. She said to me, come, we need to do a pap smear. We need to see if your womb is not upside down. Is that jargon that you use? Like, what does that mean?
I think it was tongue in cheek.
Okay. But is there a way that my womb could, for some odd reason, shift or anything of that sort?
So, okay, you're going to make me get technical now. But,
layman.
okay. But your womb, generally, like 80% of women have an anteverted womb. So if you imagine me sitting like this, right, most women's wombs face towards the belly button, right? And then there's 20%, right, whose wombs face the back. Right, backwards. Right, that's called a retroverted.
Would you like me to stand up to demonstrate? Do you want to demonstrate? With
Sure, go ahead.
I'm just going to act pregnant for a bit.
Leg.
I think maybe towards the side. This way. This
one
Right.
is pregnant. This one. Tepi is pregnant.
normal.
Oh, this way. Let's face the camera. Sorry. Okay. This way. Oh, and mic.
I'll hold
Oh,
it for you.
man.
Who needs a mic?
I need a mic.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so let me go this side.
I've got a mic for you here.
Thank you. So most women's wombs, if this is the womb, right, faces this way, right? And then anteverted faces this way. Okay, retroverted, faces this way, 20%. And you said upside down. Maybe that could be considered upside down, but not really. It's a normal anatomical variation, right? That does have implications, though, like on a lot of things. So some women will tell you, like myself, that they've never had a period pain before in the front.
You've never had a period pain?
Never. I don't know what it feels like. But I get severe backache and diarrhea. And diarrhea, right? Because I have a retroverted uterus. So my uterus is facing that way, right? So when all the inflammation happens and all of the prostaglandins are released, that way. Yes.
But then pregnancy and delivery, all of that would be normal?
I don't know. I'm going to see.
Hectic.
I think a C-section would happen because I once experienced. I have 2 kids that I not naturally given birth to, but mine. One of them, I was told that my womb is facing some other way, so I had to have a C-section because I couldn't push.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, there we go, Doc. That's
So
what's going to happen to you.
I don't know. I think
Well,
that's
I mean,
what
if
happens
that's what
to
happened
me.
to you. Yeah.
And the first C-section is not bad, guys. I'm not a doctor, but I had fun.
So I've never read that it affects normal vaginal delivery, but I could stand corrected. So what I'll do is I'll consult with my gynae friends and let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So while we're still on the giving birth, how long should one stop contraceptives when they're considering falling pregnant, like Tebi is here?
Yeah.
Oh.
She's a risk game, so she.
Thrones. You were just thrown under the bus.
Throbs. Anyway.
So it depends what you're on, right?
Okay.
If you take out the copper IUD, you can fall pregnant almost immediately, right?
Wow.
If you get the 3-month injection, right, you're going to have to wait for the 3 months to expire before you can start getting, yes. If you're on the daily pill, right, the oral contraceptive, the minute you stop taking it, you can fall pregnant, really.
Interesting.
Let's talk a conversation that I think a lot of us don't talk about when we talk about family planning. That the pro-choice of I'm pregnant and I don't want to have this child. And we don't talk about that often.
Oh, so I work at a termination clinic as well, and I'm very pro-choice. So people will almost justify like having terminations or abortions only under extenuating circumstances, which is a narrative we really have to chase. So change. So people will say, yeah, it's okay to have an abortion if you were raped, or like if you're maybe mentally incapacitated and somebody took advantage of you, or if it's a danger to your health. But under any other circumstances, you should have it. And I mean,
Age.
blessing.
Oh yeah, what if you never have a child again?
but I mean, it's ironic that you should mention this now, because if we've all been following the news, we know what's happening in America, right? Where they're threatening to take away women's rights.
Written by men.
Yes, and I am a firm believer that if you do not want this child and you are not ready, then you do what needs to be done for you. You ignore all the external influences and you make a choice that is going to support your physiological, right, and your mental needs.
And of course, we do recommend safe and legal abortions. Clinics are available for you for information. Hospitals, I know government hospitals also do offer this option that you can go in and be safe, because so many young ladies don't know who to ask and don't know who to speak to when it comes to, opting for termination, that we end up going to the back doors. We end up having these things, foreign objects shoved in our vaginas. We have pills that we're taking that end up putting not only, our baby at risk, but also ourselves. You know what I mean? So those are things that we also just don't speak about so often. I have a friend of an ex-friend of mine who went for illegal abortion. It's not like she didn't have information. For her, it was that thing that she felt she needed to do, and she bled for days.
There's so many stories around that.
Right?
It's so bad.
Interestingly, it's sometimes people have illegal abortions not knowing that they're unsafe, So if you Google right now, abortion clinic near me, the first thing you will see is call us on WhatsApp. We'll deliver anytime, 1 a.m. in the morning.
073 514.
So guys, no, there are things to look out
That's
for.
a red flag.
Absolute red flag.
But can we also talk? Okay, I know we've addressed it before, but health care workers, please do better. Please do better, because I also have a friend who has once went for that procedure. We went there. I accompanied her. It took days. The appointment got cancelled because the sister got sick for whatever reason. It was a mess.
It was a mess.
She ended up having a child that she didn't want to have.
Exactly. So I think my advice, right, to women who find out that they're pregnant, the minute you know you're pregnant, right, understand that there is a ticking clock, right? You can only have a termination within a certain period of time.
What is the
Okay.
period?
It's less than 20 weeks.
20 weeks
Yes.
5 months?
5 months?
5 months.
Less
Yes.
than 5 months.
Yes. But so when you go for your sonar, the healthcare worker will say you are 20 weeks and 1 day. You don't qualify. Yes. So when we say 5 months, people think, 5 months, give or take. If you are 1 day over 20 weeks, then it is not legal, right?
It is illegal.
Where does the 3 months come from? I used to hear 3 months back in the
That
day.
after 3 months you can't.
Yeah.
No, so 3 months is 12 weeks, and there are different options, right? So the 12 weeks, right, can be done by a nurse, right? And it's a suctioning, they suction out, right? If you're less than 9 weeks, right, and 9 weeks is a short time, you've missed one period, right? Maybe 2 periods max, right? You can still take the pill, right? And then you can do it in the safety of your home, and you can be comfortable, and you can take painkillers, it doesn't have to be an invasive procedure. And then if you're over 12 weeks, it has to be done by a doctor, right? Because now it's riskier, and the chances of you bleeding are higher and complicating are higher.
By the way, I just Googled the abortion. I
And
saw
073 came out.
Yeah, I saw one for 499.
No.
What's 499?
The
The price.
The price.
It's 499. The
So-
price is on the headline, for lack of a better word.
No, so it's a big problem, right? I don't know how Google Ads is going to sort this out, but it's definitely like until that happens, we as women need to educate ourselves. And I suppose we do that by having conversations like this. So I have recently come across a website, or it's a movement, or they're called BiggFunMusic. And they talk about pro-women's rights, and they actually have a list that they continuously update, right? About all the places you can have an abortion done in South Africa that are safe, that have been vetted by them. So they've sent people there to go through the process, and they've qualified it as safe. So for anyone watching, if you really are out of options, or you are finding dodgy things online, always go and check those out. Yes.
Becky Sisa. And also there's another app that I also saw. It's called Sintibale. It's Sintibale Health app. It's actually Dr. T's one, Dr. Tlaleng, where she also has a list of safe abortion clinics that you can also attend or go to, as well as the doctors that can help you. And I think this is information that's very important because a lot of us do sit here and we do have kids that we really didn't want.
Exactly.
And it's okay to not continue with your pregnancy if it's something you do not desire.
Yes.
Another one that we should talk about quickly and demystify, the having sex on your period. I will not get pregnant. Lay the towel, babes. Lie on your back or lie, on your stomach. And we have unprotected sex and hope that we won't get pregnant. How effective is that and how true is that?
So there's definitely a risk of you falling pregnant, right?
Don't. But what's the same?
Give us percentages because you're busy. You're busy.
I'm not busy. No. Sex is so God. Also, hey, don't judge. But no, the reason I'm saying hard, doc, is because isn't it that there's like a window period? There's a time where you're ovulating, there's a high chance of you falling pregnant. And then after you've had your period, there's a low chance of you getting pregnant.
Yes. So you're correct. You're talking about like the part where like you've bled out everything, and then you're basically building up hormone again, and then you reach ovulation, right? And during that period, you're high risk.
Yes.
Right. So, like I said, there's still a chance of you falling pregnant at any phase in the cycle. So you could be on your Flow app, right? And you could be like, today's day 2, not near ovulation. And then a month later, you're still pregnant, right? Risk. So listen, guys, people fall pregnant at all times, but like generally, right? The rule of thumb is you're okay during periods and a little bit afterwards.
I feel like we need to say that again because we immediately assume, and I want to believe there are more people who are like me who don't get that, who think that you're not gonna fall pregnant, whereas you're just saying it's a lower chance of you getting pregnant. It doesn't completely say you won't fall pregnant.
It doesn't completely. Yeah.
So the risk factors, are there any risk factors for men having unprotected sex with you while you're on your period?
Any risk factors?
Yes.
For the men?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Let's chat about them too.
Oh, okay.
It takes two to tango.
Okay. I mean, like, yes. So if you're having unprotected sex with your partner while she's bleeding, I mean, you're exposed to a whole lot of blood. STIs are still a thing, right? There's a chance of them catching STIs at all stages, right? During, like, as long as there's no condom, like, your risk as a man of catching an STI is quite high. So...
I'm very curious about this, ne? And I'm sorry to cut you there, because talking about that STI. So my understanding of what an STI is and how I would get an STI is of a man who has multiple partners, or I have multiple partners, right? Now, say it's a monogamous relationship, sexually so even. Are we still able to have STIs roaming between the two of us? How do they even develop if that's the case?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Right? So, right, there are a lot of men, right, and women who are asymptomatic, right? So they've been carrying this STI for 3 years, 2 years, right, and they've never gotten symptoms. Okay. Let's talk about bacterial ones. So chlamydia, gonorrhea, trichomoniasis. Okay.
No.
No, like I want to leave the set. It's getting hot up in here.
Yeah, good.
And let's say, for example, like after 2 years, you start developing severe like pelvic pain, right? And you go to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, like what are your symptoms? And you're like, no, it's painful when I have sex, I just have this pain here and it's really bad. I don't know what's happening. And then the doctor says, like, what is your discharge like? You're like, no, it's the usual yellow discharge, because you're so used to yellow discharge for the last 2 years, right? That's your normal. Right? Or it's, the same grayish, like green discharge, and then he does a screen and he says, oh, actually you have a sexually transmitted bacterial infection. And you're like, oh no, my partner must have cheated. That's not always the case, right? It could just be that one of you has had this and you were asymptomatic for a while, and you're presenting now with symptoms, right? Some people also just find out when they can't have kids because it affects your tubes, if it spreads, and then they're infertile. Same thing with the men as well, So I always say, if you're going to get into a relationship and it's serious, right? And you want to consider not using condoms anymore, then it's very important to go for a sexual health screen. But there's one more thing that I know so many people don't know, and it's so important. Herpes, right? When we think herpes, we think, oh my goodness, definitely not me, right?
Why are you touching me, girl? Herpes. Now with your
Not
flu.
herpes, guys.
Yes.
Sorry guys, maybe my English might so there's type 1 herpes and there's type 2 herpes, right? Herpes is a virus. Viruses cannot be cured, okay? Type 1 herpes, usually in 80% of people, presents on the lip. So type 1, 80% usually is on the lip. So you'll have a fever blister and a cold, right? And what I've seen so many times in my practice is somebody will come in, a lady will come in, and she'll be like, Doc, I've got these blisters down there, it burns so badly when I pee, it feels like there's so many little cuts, and there won't be other symptoms. It just burns a lot when she pees, when the pee touches these cuts, and then I will look and I'll see maybe little blisters or 1 or 2 small cuts, right? Very, very tiny, you can almost miss them, but they're extremely painful. And then my first question will be, does your partner have this? No, my partner doesn't have this. Then I will usually say, have you ever had a fever blister? Right? And they will say, no, I've never had a fever blister in my life, because there are many people who've never had fever blisters in their life. I've never gotten one of those. And then I'll be like, okay, has your partner recently had a fever blister in the last couple of days or the last week or two? And they're like, oh yeah, he had a fever blister last week and he went down on me. Yes. Guys? Yes. 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 Yes.
Guys, wait.
No, don't people do that?
Listen. Okay. Sometimes the fever blister is going away. It's not like a big fever blister. It's going away, but it's still very infectious.
So if you have a fever blister,
you should not be having sex with your partner or going down on them or kissing them.
Wait, Doc, I just want to find
herpes, yes.
Yes.
Herpes. A form of herpes.
Mufftown.
Viya. I'm sorry, it's the mountain I'm willing to die on. I'm sorry. It's the hill I'm climbing. So you were telling us about the types.
So that's type 1 herpes. And that's how, and nobody's cheated, right? You guys have been together for 10 years.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, one day, somebody gets, a cold sore. And you're exposed, right? Because,
guys.
so your body...
Sorry, we're just shocked.
Okay, it's fine.
Just give us a moment. It's not everyday conversations. And I'm glad we're having this one.
Guys.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
So, right? Be wary of fever blisters.
Okay, so how do you treat type 1?
Okay, so type 1 and type 2 treated the same way. So now you understand that 80% of people have type 1 here, the other 20% caught it down there, right? Unfortunately, right? It's just, and it's really nothing to be ashamed about,
100%.
So somebody said the other day, who was it? They're like, oh, okay, so you just don't get fever blisters here, you get them there. What's the difference, right? The second thing, this type 2 herpes, herpes simplex virus 2, right, is 80% of people get it in the genitals, and then the other 20% can get it here. It's a more aggressive form, right, of herpes, right? It's a little bit more debilitating, unfortunately. So if you have type 2 herpes, the chances are that you will get recurrent monthly blisters, like every month to 2 months. And this is lifelong, unless maybe the doctor puts you on an antiviral for a year, for 6 months to a year. So it can be extremely debilitating, and it can be extremely disempowering.
Do you get migraines as well? Because I remember I was in varsity and I went to the varsity clinic. I was there to pick up something else. And obviously, your healthcare workers have absolutely no
chill. They don't watch podcasts and chill.
And I remember this boy, I don't know what he came in for, but I remember just the nurse screaming, "Wena o tshwere ke tlhogo because o tshwere ke hepatitis B."
Oh, no.
I promise you, I can't make shit like this up.
Okay.
And she literally screamed that out in front of all of us. Look, at that time, I knew not necessarily what it was, but I'd heard it before because, we've had LO, etc. But I didn't know the extent of what hepatitis A, B, or whatever is.
Yes.
So for her to scream it out like that, I, distinctly sat on my phone and I said, what is this thing?
Yes. So herpes and hepatitis are both viral infections, but they affect you differently, right? And they're different things. Again, healthcare workers shouldn't have been doing that. That's a breach of confidentiality, But hepatitis is quite serious. Hepatitis B and C. And again, like all viruses, can be transferred sexually, can be transferred through blood or fluid products, like from one person to another, needles, So, yeah. Those are the two different types, HSV1, herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, right? Can be treated, right, but very contagious and not necessarily something that you want to contract. And again, can be picked up on a blood test.
So can one then move over to become 2 if left untreated?
No.
It doesn't.
They're different types.
Okay.
They're different types, yes.
Before I go on to the next question, how much time do we still have with Dr. Kim? Because he's stressed, this one. He's stressed. But let me ask you one last question just before we wrap up, which I also think is quite important for the ladies. In fact, it's not even a question. I just need you to sort of make it an open space and a safe space for ladies to speak about their sexual health, number one, and also just to speak about contraceptives and how important they are. So if you want to say something to the young lady who's listening right now who just feels like they're too scared and their contraceptive method is the pull-out method, which many of us have been fooled about, right? Because when we start having sex, we always feel like it's the man who is going to lead, who's going to dominate, who's going to dictate it. Yes. And then next thing you know, you're pregnant. You're young, you don't know, you didn't know, and you still don't know. But that's why we have platforms like this, on the table. That's why we have platforms like Viya, who come and assist us for conversations and information like this.
Exactly. And I think maybe in parting, the last thing I would say is empower yourself with knowledge. Have the conversations, don't be shy. Even if you just want to go to a doctor or a nurse in private or government, you can literally just go in and book a consult and say, I just want to discuss my options. Don't ever let a man tell you, right, or a partner tell you what you should and shouldn't do. A lot of men say, I don't like, I've had a lot of patients who have said, my partner doesn't want me to take this. My partner doesn't want me to do this. It's your choice. It's your body. You do what suits you and what is healthy for you.
Ladies, any parting shots to Dr. Kim?
No more Muff Town. That's all.
No, I think what I got from today's conversation, which I didn't know really, was that we need to go for a health check before you consider any type of contraceptive that you're gonna take. I think that's something majority of us didn't know.
Yeah. Dr. Kim? Thank you so much. And of course, to the Viya team, thank you so much. You can also visit them on www.viya.health. You can get more information there. And also, even apart from information, even if you go on their Instagram, I think I might have bumped into you guys on TikTok. Were you guys on TikTok? Yeah. I bumped into them on TikTok as well. They really do have open conversations about sex, about your health. Those conversations that you're too scared to ask, that you'd rather go to Google for? We're having them. Young black women, okay, are having these conversations and opening them up for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kim.
It's been an awesome, awesome episode. Once again, all the time at Red Cherry. Thank you. Just like that, we outie.